This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most disturbing, most closely watched murder cases in recent American memory. The brutal slayings of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho. And the alleged killer now etched in the national psyche, Bryan Kohberger. We don't have to say alleged anymore. He is the killer. But this isn't just a conversation about what happened. It's about what still does not add up. What remains buried beneath press conferences, courtroom formality, and tidy timelines that fail to explain the why. Because behind the crime scene photos and the cell tower pings, there's a far messier, more human story unfolding. One that involves a broken family, a faltering legal defense, and a psychological spiral that few of us can begin to comprehend. Joining me today are 2 guests uniquely equipped to cut through the noise. First, Howard Blum, award-winning investigative journalist, New York Times best-selling author, and the man who's broken some of the most important stories in the case, and has also discussed some of the bombshell details that have come out, originally broken by Dateline, discussing 6 a.m. phone call, technically 5:54 a.m., that Bryan Kohberger made to his family less than 2 hours. Let that sink in. Less than 2 hours after the murders, bright and sunny in the morning, he's calling mom and dad. Have a nice little conversation. Holidays are coming up. What's on your list? The phone registered to his father is where that call went to. A call that, if you ask Blum, changed everything. He's also the author of When the Night Comes Falling, a searing exploration of the case that functions as both a crime narrative and a requiem. And joining us also, Robin Drake, retired FBI special agent and former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. Robin brings a surgical eye to behavior, kind that sees meaning in every deviation, every misplaced reaction, every nervous tick. When people's stories don't match their pattern, Robin spots it. So, together, we're going to be unpacking the psychological chaos around this case, the fear, denial, the quiet unraveling inside the Kohberger home. We're talking about remorse, or something like it, maybe, and what happens when people closest to a killer begin putting 2 and 2 together, too late to stop anything, but maybe just in time to realize they've been protecting a lie. It all begins with that early morning phone call, the one nobody knew about until Blum's reporting and Dateline made it public, a call between Bryan Kohberger and his family. It just might have been the first real crack in the facade. So I start by asking Howard, what exactly was said on that call? And why did it matter so damn much?
First, we should remember that Kohberger, and now we can say Kohberger, not the alleged killer, Kohberger left the house on King Road at 4:20 in the morning. Now at 5:54 in the morning, less than 2 hours later, he is, according to Dateline, which first broke this story, he's making a call to a phone registered to his father, Michael Kohberger. Mm-hmm. That is, again, just 2 hours after the murder, approximately. What was said? Only Bryan Kohberger and to whomever he spoke with, only they know what was said. However, my reporting has revealed that he was largely talking on that conversation with his mother, Marianne Kohberger. And this becomes significant when we look to the evolution of the plea deal. Early on, I've been told that Ann Taylor, Kohberger's legal aid lawyer, was realizing, oh my gosh, my client really is guilty. And even worse, I'm not going to be able to raise reasonable doubt in a jury, and my client is going to have to face the long guns of a firing squad. And that scared her. So she approaches Kohberger and says, let's cut a plea deal. Kohberger calls his parents, and his mother says no. She just does not want her son to plead guilty, whether she thought she was innocent, whether she did not want to face the realization that he could be guilty at that moment. For whatever reason, she says no, and so they nix the plea deal. Then, in June, towards the middle of June, the Kohberger team tries two Hail Mary passes. They try to convince the judge that they have alternate perpetrators, that Kohberger was really the patsy in this whole case, that other people were the murderers. They planted a knife sheath there that had Kohberger's DNA in it. And they even file a motion with the judge naming these four people. And the judge reads this motion, Judge Hippler, and he says, not so fast. This is circumstantial evidence at best. It's allegations, not evidence. So that's thrown out. Mm-hmm. Then the alibi defense. That's their second Hail Mary pass. They want people to think that Kohberger was off in a wilderness park in Washington State at 4 a.m. on a freezing, cloudy night stargazing. And the judge looked at this quote-unquote evidence, and he says, that alibi is not an alibi. So now they had no alibi defense. They had no alternative perpetrator theory they could introduce and no alibi. So they approached Kohberger again and said, look, for your own sake, to save you from the firing squad, which is the rule in Idaho, you really should consider cutting a deal. Let us go, give us permission to go to the prosecution, see if we can cut a deal. Kohberger once again calls up his parents. However, this time, his parents realize after the Dateline special that revealed the call that they might have to go on the stand, his mother might have to go on the stand and talk about what was said during that 54-minute phone call less than 2 hours after the murders. Kohberger now realizes that his parents could be put in a position, if they're asked probing questions, that would legally incriminate them. It also becomes clear to the parents that the father would now certainly have to testify about his cross-country trip with his son in the weeks after the murder, where they're sitting shoulder to shoulder in a white Hyundai Elantra, while all the police all over the country are looking for a suspect in a white Hyundai Elantra, and Michael Kohberger, the father, might have to explain under oath what was said. So when Kohberger realizes that not only has he ruined his parents' life, but he might put them in legal jeopardy, he feels a sense of something akin to remorse. Yeah. Let's not talk about remorse for him. I mean, that's too specific an emotion. His emotions are much more complicated. And I only got a B- in Psych 1 in college. I wouldn't be the one to be an authority on that. But he decides that he owes his parents a duty to try to prevent them, to put them from putting themselves on the stand and incriminating themselves. And also, at the same time, he'll be able to save his own life, live out his future in prison, where he'll be able to scheme and dream. So he then tells Ann Taylor, okay, see if you can get me a deal. Ann Taylor goes to the prosecution, to Bill Thompson, who's leading the case. And Thompson, for reasons that befuddle me, leave me completely baffled, agrees. He's holding all the cards. Now, it's never a sure thing, and any veteran prosecutor will tell you that you're going to win. You're always rolling the dice when you go into the courtroom. However, he was holding all the cards. And what I believe happened is that Thompson just lost the appetite for the fight.
Yeah.
He said enough already. He was ready to go fishing. And when you think about it, all the powers that be in Idaho from the very beginning have been so ready, so eager to move on. I mean, first you had Judge, the original judge in the case. And Judge said, all right, take the case up north to Boise. Let's get rid of it. And as soon as they did, he retired from the bench. He didn't want to follow the case there. He had had enough. Then there was Chief Fry, who had ran the investigation. He appeared on the news the night of the arrest, teary-eyed. But then in the aftermath, he retired from the police department. He quit. He had enough at working for Moscow. He's now working for a Washington State Police Department. Then there was even Judge Hippler. On this first day that he comes to the court, he's taken over this case. He begins by addressing everyone, saying, I'd like to tell you I'm happy to be here, but why begin with a falsehood? And, most tellingly at all, you have the University of Idaho authorities. They couldn't wait to tear down the murder house. They wanted to demolish it, make believe it would go away. The people would stop thinking about it. out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's been the mindset of the honorable men who've been running the state of Idaho, making these decisions about how the case would proceed forward.
I want to go to Robin here in a second, but I want to ask you one more quick question. Robin Dreek, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Unit, with us as well. I didn't introduce you at the very beginning, but I want to ask you one quick question before I go to you, Robin, on this. Do you think, Howard, that there was incriminating things said on that phone call with the parents? Maybe not necessarily, hey, I killed a bunch of kids today, but maybe if they look back on it retrospectively, there might have been some little nuggets that would have made them raise their eyebrows.
From what I've been able to ascertain, the parents came off that phone call and began to think, oh my gosh, what is going on? Something is wrong with our son. Then later, when they found out about the murders and the aftermath, they saw his strange behavior when he came home for Christmas, packing his garbage in plastic bags to conceal the DNA, his obsessively cleaning his car. They began to, in their minds, begin to put two and two together. Mm-hmm. And yet they still were reluctant, as I guess any parent might be, to confront the reality that my son, my child, is a monster.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Robin?
Yeah, Howard, thank you so much for, as we said before we even started, for everything you've done and the deep dive and depth of field you have on this case. You started right out from the get-go of identifying a massive behavior spike right after the murders. And that's what that phone call was, whether it's to his mom or dad, that early in the morning, because all of us have these arcs. I call them behavior arcs. And behavior arcs become extremely predictable for people's behavior, past, present, and future, unless there's something that happens that causes a major deviation. And from the way you laid it out, it sounds like that phone call early in the morning was a massive deviation from what he normally did, regardless of that content of the conversation. That was a deviation and something caused it. And then you had all these other data points and deviations in his behavior that his parents are picking up. Notably, you did say, parent of two adult children as well, we want to assume the best. We don't want to turn a blind eye. What do you think kept them so staunch in that he's innocent, even like you're saying, even when the mother was battling to say he's innocent, when all the data points were just lining up against him?
I think on some level, it's akin to you get a diagnosis from a doctor, and you just don't want to confront it. And I think your insights about his behavior that morning are particularly interesting, because look what happened after that. After that phone call, he then pretty much immediately gets in his car and returns to the house on King Road, either to see if he can get his knife back, this we'll never know, or was he just wanting to see if they had been alerted? And then he drives back to his apartment in Washington State, and he takes that now infamous selfie with the thumbs up. That's sort of self-congratulatory. But I think those three events, the phone call, driving back to the house on King Road, and the selfie, are part of one whole of Kohberger's processing just what he did hours before at 4 a.m.
There is something especially chilling about the moments that almost happened. The plea deal that almost went through, the family members who almost admitted what they were starting to suspect, the chance at justice that almost looked like a trial. What the conversation really revealed is the difference between legal guilt and emotional reckoning. Yes, Kohberger pled guilty. Yes, the evidence was overwhelming, but what Howard's reporting laid bare and what Robin helped us decode is how looking at it in a different way, how long it took even the people closest to Bryan to see him for what he actually is, and how far they were willing to go to deny it. The 6 a.m. phone call wasn't just a timestamp on a call log. It was a psychological flare. And the fact that it went to his parents and that his mother allegedly took the lead on that conversation shifts how we interpret everything that came after. The refusal to take the first plea, the fear of testifying, the sudden shift after the Dateline special. It wasn't just about strategy, it was about damage control, because once that call became public, the spotlight widened to include them. And then there's this deeper pattern. Idaho officials who didn't seem to want to see this case through. Judges retiring, police chief stepping down. A prosecution team, as Howard put it, that may have just lost the appetite for the fight. And maybe that's the most disturbing part of all. Not that the system failed, but that it flinched. That when justice needed the long haul, the state chose convenience. Robin made a sharp point, too. Behavior leaves clues, and Bryan's arc from the phone call to the return to the crime scene to the now infamous selfie was one long behavioral red flag. The kind that only you really see clearly when you stop making excuses for people. So where does it leave us? A man in prison, 4 families without answers, and a haunting sense that some truths may never make it to the record. But thanks to voices like Howard's and Robin's, at least we're still asking the hard questions. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section on our YouTube page. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi to join us in those conversations. If you're on the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever it may be sure to press subscribe so you don't miss any of our coverage on this case or the many that we cover for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. My name is Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.